If Bandora could be defeated by overacting, this video series would have been over years ago. But she can't, so it's the 28th episode of the all-new Mighty Morphin Zyurangers. Boy, oh boy, it's time to start the finale storyline. Before we get to that, though, surprise! I wanted to take a quick look at this episode, as several of you have mentioned it to me over the years. A pig surprise falls in the back 20 of Season 1 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, so it actually comes after the original finale. We've covered a handful of episodes that occur after that division because there were a few stray episodes of Zyurangers that hadn't been adapted until that point. This isn't one of those. Well, it does use Zyuranger footage. It's kind of hard to describe this one. It's rather different than any episode I've covered. It doesn't really lend itself to my direct comparison format, but it is a fascinating look at the heavy use of creative editing to make a new product, and that is very much in my wheelhouse. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense, but hopefully you'll understand what I mean as we get into this. I guess the best precedent we have for this is when we covered Season 2's The Ninja Encounter Part 2 earlier this year. Narratively, it was a mess. Sorry, let me start over. Narratively, it was in part a sequel to Birds of a Feather, reviving the Hatchosaurus and Cardiatron monsters from that episode. But in terms of its construction, it was another adaptation of Live Again Ju-Soken, reusing a lot of the same Zyuranger footage to tell its new story. Likewise, A Pig Surprise is a sequel to Food Fight. A new pudgy pig enters the fray, and the Power Rangers must once again find a way to defeat it. And in order to complete that story, it recycles the same footage from Terror Eaten in an Instant that Food Fight did. But even as far removed as some Power Rangers episodes are from their Sentai counterparts, I struggle to call this an adaptation. It uses no more than 60 seconds worth of footage from Eaten in an Instant. As far removed as the Ninja Encounter Part 2 was from its origins, the footage it reused was at least substantial enough to match some loose interpretation of its structure. This uses just enough footage to establish that the Power Rangers do indeed fight a pudgy pig. And that's it. Truth be told, this could be considered a rather radical departure. It's a largely original story, comprised mostly of original footage, and then the gaps are filled by splicing together about half a dozen episodes worth of Zyuranger content in order to make that story make sense. This could almost be considered a clip show, featuring fight highlights from across the first season, except that the show is hoping you don't recognize it as such. I mean, yeah, that sums up Power Rangers in general, but you get what I mean. Even from the perspective of your average 90s latchkey kid, this has all been done before. Honestly, the footage from Eaten in an Instant makes up a tiny fraction of the Zyuranger footage this episode uses. And that's why I struggle to even consider this an adaptation. To briefly summarize, the Power Rangers engage in yet another volunteer event, pairing up humans with pets. However, Rita has set up a countdown device to turn Bulk and Skull's new pet pig Norman into a new pudgy pig. That presents a unique dilemma, as the monster is still Norman, and the Power Rangers don't really want to hurt him. But all of these Green Acres hijinks are really just to distract the Rangers from Goldar and Scorpina reliving their greatest hits. Goldar and Scorpina laying waste to the city in a totally brand new way. Ultimately, the Rangers must step into this reused footage to defeat the baddies and save Norman. This is a very weird episode, and I actually mean that in a pretty good way. It's silly as all get out, but because it's primarily an original concept, Power Rangers isn't constantly tripping over the footage it's trying to adapt. Zack gets a good fight, Billy and Trini get to work on tech stuff, Bulk and Skull are hilarious, even if their storyline never really resolves. I guess they just don't want Norman anymore. Pudgy Pig is presented as a sympathetic monster that needs to be saved, and we spend a surprising amount of time with the Power Rangers at a farm. The American Rangers still don't have the movement panache their Zyuranger counterparts do, but they're getting better. Here's the thing. I've said before that I always watch the Power Rangers episode first, so I don't have a preconceived notion of what the footage is supposed to be. So oftentimes I'll finish Power Rangers thinking, hey, this is really good. It's definitely going to win. Then I'll watch Zyuranger and go, oh, yeah, this is a lot better. So maybe it's because I don't have anything to compare it to, but this is a really good episode. It's silly and stupid and over the top, but in the best way. And I can't help but think it's rather ambitious given how much footage they shoot. But that doesn't mean I still can't make fun of how heavily edited this is. Terror Eaten in an Instant has a fight on a rooftop with Dora Kirke, wherein it eats the Zyurangers' weapons. Food Fight uses a lot of this for the same purpose, primarily cutting out the stuff with Gnome. Remember Gnome? No? Yeah, I don't blame you. But in a Pig Surprise, attempting to use this footage hits 2 roadblocks. The episode isn't reusing the plot point of the monster eating the weapons, and the Rangers want to avoid harming the pig. As such, in between shots the weapons will suddenly disappear, as the scenes where they are eaten are edited out. To try to mask the incongruity of the Rangers going full force weapons drawn against this pig they care about so much, they throw in some new ADR lines like this.
Come on, we don't want to hurt you!
I believe you! And too bad it's Sunday, those buildings would have been filled up tomorrow. That brings us to Goldar and Scorpina. Editing together footage from several prior episodes, A Pig Surprise tries to convince us this is a brand new fight. We have elements from Arise Daijujin, The Sixth Hero, Daijujin's Last Day, and Smash It the Mirror of Death. Now, Power Rangers has done this in another episode that we've already covered that aired around the same time, Rita's Seed of Evil. But those examples did not fit together at all. This one does a far better job blending these disparate bits together. Well, except for this bit where they have to cover the untransformed Zyurangers taking a hit. This environment is not the city they were just in. It ultimately evens out to a fairly generic fight. Nothing terribly interesting happens, they just fight and fight and fight until Goldar leaves. But I can't help but be impressed that this actually makes sense to any degree. However, both Jason and Rita refer to Megazord's weapon as the Mega Sword.
We need the Mega Sword, now!
Megazord, oh no!
I'd say I'd thought we'd moved past that, but I thought we'd moved past all of these scenes too. There's really nothing to compare this to, so I'll give the win to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers by default. Congratulations, you tried. And I mean that. For what seems at first glance an easy clip show to pad out the season, given the amount of original footage, I'd wager they probably had to put in at least as much effort as they usually would, if not more. For real this time, it's the epic multi-part finale. Like so many multi-part storylines we've covered over the past 3 years, Power Rangers takes what was a 4-part story and condenses it down to 2. That means there are a lot of ideas and content that Power Rangers has to rush through or simply cut entirely. That results in a lot of differences. Of course, some of those differences are by design. This is very much the end of Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, and these 4 episodes are spent drawing its stories and characters to a conclusion. But Power Rangers is hedging its bets, clearly wanting to have it both ways. I definitely remember, even as a little kid, these episodes feeling important. The situation reads as especially dire compared to a normal episode. The city of Angel Grove celebrates the Power Rangers as if they had accomplished something special. Tommy makes a cameo appearance, as departed cast members will often return for final episodes. Zordon offers the Power Rangers a chance to retire, as if there's any logic or impetus for them to do so. The series stopped airing new episodes after this for the next few months. The title is literally Doomsday. Even at 7 I picked up on a lot of these cues, but even a cursory examination of Doomsday reveals it really isn't an ending at all. Rita isn't defeated, the Power Rangers don't pack up and go home, nothing really changes by the end of this 2-parter. All of this additional hoopla comes across as silly and unnecessary, a show pushing me to feel an emotion that's not really present. Say what you will about the Zyuranger finale, but at least it knows what it is. And you're probably screaming at me that Doomsday was originally a finale, but the show was successful, so they changed their mind and re-edited it. It really doesn't matter. All that matters is what we get. This is the show, and it's weird. As it is Zyuranger's primary ongoing story thread, it should come as no surprise that the dinosaur eggs return to the forefront. They have been incubating inside King Brachion for a while, and they are now about ready to hatch. I'm pretty sure this wasn't brought up before, but the eggs are now said to be tied to the existence of the guardian beasts. As they are the only dinosaurs left in existence, if they are destroyed, that will be the end of the dinosaurs completely. The Dino Apocalypse. And if this Dino Apocalypse happens, the guardian beasts will cease to exist. So this is Bandora's last chance. She schemes to lure King Brachion into battle to give her access to the eggs. As Power Rangers used its power eggs as a one-off plot device way back at the beginning of the series, this element is completely removed. During this storyline, we are introduced to a creepy kid in a wig named Kai. He has the power to blood bend. Okay, it's telekinesis, but tell me this doesn't remind you of the "don't hurt your friends, Katara" scene. He kidnaps a bunch of kids, then he appears at Bandora's palace and reveals to Bandora that he is her son. Dun dun dun! Way back in the olden days, Kai was one of those little sociopaths that like to pull the legs off of prehistoric spiders and crack open dinosaur eggs for fun. Well, the dinosaurs didn't like that last part, and he came down with a slight case of death. The queen made a deal with the devil, Dai Satan, for revenge, and he turned her into the witch Bandora. The sad thing is that Bandora doesn't even remember who he is when he first shows up. I doubt I have to tell you the show heavily insinuates the deal with the devil is a monkey's paw type wish. But I've pointed out in the past the sly references the show has made to Bandora's deal with the devil. Her ongoing motivation of harming children shows a twisted repackaging of her original motivation, that she's become exactly what she hates. Even after all she's sacrificed, she's still not going to get what she wants. Kai refuses to let her touch him for some reason, and completely rejects the idea that they can be together, treating them solely as pawns of their master. It's a decent amount of complexity added to the main villain that doesn't feel tacked on. This seems like a totally natural development. And given Bandora's rather comedic presence, it's not baggage she really needs to carry around until the end, so it's wise to hold it back. That's a lot to explain, and nearly all for naught. Power Rangers doesn't care if Rita has any more complexity than suffering from the occasional headache, so yeah, all of this stuff is gone too. Well, they do have 2 fewer episodes to fill. Kai pilots a new giant robot, Dora Talos, named after the bronze guardian automaton from Greek mythology because of course it is. This becomes Cyclopsis in Power Rangers. Because Kai has been excised, Goldar fills in as the pilot, which means all the cockpit shots have to be recreated for Doomsday. The kids that Kai kidnaps are essentially replaced by the idea of Rita disappearing all the inhabitants of Angel Grove. And not only are those fairly high stakes, the image of the Power Rangers alone in the once crowded park is rather eerie. Both shows feature the villains bringing their palace down to Earth from the moon. However, in Zyuranger, what do my ears perceive? It's the Dora song! They have microphones set up and everything! Oh, I've missed this so much! What does Power Rangers have? It doesn't have the Dora song? Zyuranger wins. Alright, I won't be that cheap. But no sane person should blame me if I was. This remains the absolute best thing, and I would have loved this in Power Rangers. So much of this adaptation is stripping the villain of everything that makes her interesting. Honestly, what really sticks out to me about this pairing is the ending to Doomsday Part 1. I want to see if I can encapsulate the experience and why I found it so odd. Like any good two-parter, the first part ends on a cliffhanger. Cyclopsis is back. Titanus is gone. The citizens of Angel Grove are still missing. How could things be more intense? Well, I didn't really come away from this feeling any intensity. Intellectually, all of the facts are there to make you understand why things are bad, but a cliffhanger is more about generating emotion, feeling that punch to the gut, the rug pulled out from under you, realizing someone just pooped in the salad you're eating. That's not very nice. And the order of events doesn't work for that. Follow along with me. Cyclopsis is destroying the Power Rangers. That's tense. They form Ultrazord and destroy Cyclopsis. Alright, that's awesome. Tension is released. Then Rita sinks Titanus in a hole. Yeah, that's pretty bad, and it's a striking visual, but at the same time, I can't help thinking it isn't as big a deal as it should be. Hey, Rita, don't do that. But the Rangers have already won, so who cares? And there's not even a change of circumstance. If Rita can do this, why hasn't she already? And I don't mean in general. Zordon states Rita coming to Earth enhances her powers, which is another why didn't she do this before, but let's just ignore that. Why didn't she do it during this battle before her Zord was destroyed? The structure makes this feel petty rather than devastating, less a shocking reversal of fortune, and more a bitter ex keying your car. Then Lokar returns. Okay, I guess he's part of the story now. And with his added power, they revive Cyclopsis. And that's really bad, but the Power Rangers are watching it from the safety of the command center. So they just left? Didn't this happen immediately afterwards? Why did they leave? It's hard to feel tension about this when the Rangers aren't in any immediate danger. Like I said, logically, I understand that the show has established that Titanus was the one thing allowing the Rangers to defeat Cyclopsis, so without him, they are screwed. But emotionally, everything feels distant and removed. Those elements don't build on each other, they all feel disconnected and tonally inconsistent. So at this point, I'm looking at the clock, noticing there's less than a minute left in the episode, and I'm wondering how they could possibly ratchet up the tension in time for a show-stopping cliffhanger. Then Zordon says this.
Because if you lose this battle, they will all be trapped in Rita's vortex forever.
Oh, right. That happened 11 minutes ago. I'd kind of forgotten about it because the show hadn't mentioned it since then. But that's our cliffhanger because there has to be something at stake. See what I mean about it all feeling disconnected? Maybe you don't yet. Let me see if I can illustrate what I mean. Imagine this is structured differently. Imagine Lokar's been built up for the entire episode as a ticking clock. They gotta work fast before he gets there and makes things worse, so every second Cyclopsis is beating them is a second wasted. The Rangers struggle, and with the help of Titanus, they beat Cyclopsis. Now, they say it's time to head into Rita's dark dimension to save the citizens of Angel Grove, reminding us that that's at stake. But they're too late. Lokar has arrived, and with his power, Rita is able to revive Cyclopsis. No problem, the Rangers say. We beat that thing before and we can do it again. Oh yeah? Not without Titanus you can't. Now, getting rid of Titanus is a clear strategy that turns the tide of battle. And the episode can end with them losing the fight. That's a cliffhanger. But now do you see what I mean? Each event builds on the last one, making things worse and worse, quickly turning a manageable situation into a dire defeat. Or if you can't do all of that for whatever reason, at least end the episode on Megazord getting its arm ripped off. That's immediate danger. Those are the stakes raised to a dramatic crescendo. And surprise, surprise, that's how Zyuranger ends it. In fact, Zyuranger's story handles most of this much better. The appearance of Kai portends the return of Dai Satan, who is connected to this storyline and who is responsible for making Kai and Bandora who they are. The characters constantly talk about how he's on his way back. The order of events is more or less the same as it is in Power Rangers, but the loss of King Brachion is used as a first act dramatic beat, right before the commercial break, which fits better. And it's also not random. Barza had been warning the Zyurangers not to use Brachion. Because Brachion's incubating the dinosaur eggs, Bandora wants the Zyurangers to summon him. It's part of her trap. Bandora taking out Brachion is the inevitable consequence of him saving their lives, not just a random thing that happens. As the kidnapped kids are piloting Doratalos, that dilemma is never far from our minds. Defeating Doratalos allows the Zyurangers to save the kids, so that tension is resolved. Most of the second act is devoted to the Zyurangers overacting. Reacting to the inevitability of Dai Satan's arrival now that their arsenal has been diminished. It ends with the revival of Doratalos, the Zyurangers utterly beaten. That's a much better structure. But don't think I'm letting Zyuranger off the hook here either. Something that kept nagging at me while watching these episodes is how familiar this all feels. This is supposed to be the conclusion, the finale battle. The stakes should be at their highest. Both sides should be pulling out all the stops. Elements like Kai and Doratalos definitely do that, but Barza warning the Zyurangers not to use King Brachion immediately reminded me of Daijujin's Last Day, where Bandora had a similar plan to destroy Daijujin, and the Zyurangers had to be placed in an impossible situation in order to be goaded into falling for the trap. That felt much more dire than this, and it was less than halfway through the series. This works perfectly well within the confines of its own narrative, but within the context of the series, it feels like Zyuranger shot its wad way too early, leaving the finale nowhere to go. It's not hard to understand why the Dragon Ranger Green Ranger storyline is far more memorable in both series than these are. But we're only halfway through. As for that first half, let's score them. For story, I'm afraid it's not much of a contest. On one side, we have the Power Rangers being honored in a park. On the other side, we have the long-awaited peeling back of the villain's humanity and the stakes set in place for a final confrontation. The dinosaur eggs don't really do much for me, but they functionally raise the stakes. Zyuranger wins. For characters, Bandora is clearly at her best here, enough said. In Power Rangers, there is a nice bit where Trini wonders if Tommy will show up to this celebration, or if the reminder of his exclusion will be too painful for him. That's literally all the characterization there is, and it's a hypothetical centered around a character who hasn't even appeared yet. Zyuranger wins. Finally, for action, most of it is the same, and I was about to give this a tie. Then I remembered how much fun wire work there is in Zyuranger that had to be cut out for Power Rangers. I'm doing my best here to give Power Rangers a leg up, but Zyuranger wins. The first half of this storyline nets a win for Zyuranger, but maybe the second half will fare better for Power Rangers. I want to thank everybody for being awesome. Recently, my computer and backup hard drives decided to conspire against me and conk out simultaneously. For a while, I thought I'd lost everything, including all the assets I used to make these videos. I've had to spend a lot of time, money, and happiness trying to get it all sorted out while keeping my release schedule regular for all of you. I've gotten a lot of help from awesome friends, kind words from viewers like you, and helpful donations from patrons. In general, you've just made it all go much more smoothly. Next time will be the 29th and final episode of the all-new Mighty Morphin Zyurangers. What is it with me and taking 29 episodes to cover something? I guess it's not important. But I appreciate all of you being here, and I hope to see you next time.